Since the very earliest days of fnafsl, Golden Freddy has been a fan favorite character among viewers, known for his unique abilities and story, which is set him apart among the many other characters. His ghostly nature and purpose only expanded throughout the original trilogy as fans latched on to his strange behavior and cryptic character. This ultimately culminated in FNAF 3, where Golden Freddy not only appeared to be the child who scared William Afton into a spring bodysuit, resulting in his death and transformation into Springtrap, but also seemed to be the central focus of the secret Happiest Day minigames, leaving many of us fans wondering what it all meant and what truly made him so special. This intrigue has never really gone away, as the debates about Golden Freddy continue to this day. Is he one soul or two? Is his soul shattered? Is he the crying child, Cassidy, or maybe even Andrew? Fans can't even agree on the basic identity of this central character, which really embodies where FNAF has become at this point. You can see this reflected in the many well-made Golden Freddy videos over the past year, all claiming that they solved Golden Freddy. And well, that is a lot of solving, and it is a bit late, but I'm here to tell you, they're wrong, and I'm going to give you the real answer. Before we start, let me clarify. This is a theory, and like every FNAF theory, it's subjective and up for interpretation. Everything I say should be viewed as speculative. However, this video will go in a unique direction. This theory will use little to no material from after the release of FNAF 4, with a few exceptions and references to later media. The reason for this is that I believe the key to solving Golden Freddy, and by extension, FNAF 4, is by looking at the game through a 2015 perspective. FNAF 4 was marketed under the tagline The Final Chapter. This description is even still in FNAF 4's Steam description, in this last chapter of the fnafsl original story. Not to mention too the 4 Games 1 story teaser. Scott through this, and in the past, has shown that FNAF 1 to 4 is solvable on its own. This is the original story, which is self-contained and complete. So this makes me believe that if we can understand the past, we can better solve the present lore. And while I know many of you will not agree with the conclusions I make, and some of you will be skeptical, I ask you to stick with me and approach this from a fresh perspective. Clear your minds and place yourselves back in July 2015. One last point before we dive in. I am of the opinion that fazbearfrights is not a part of the game's timeline, but rather in-universe media and books created by Fazbear Entertainment, or in theory terms, Frights fiction. And while this isn't particularly relevant to the video, it is what I'll have in mind going forward. If you do believe in the snitch-line theory, that is perfectly fine, just be respectful as always. For the purpose of this video though, I'm asking you to place yourselves back in July 2015. With all that said, let's begin. One of the most important aspects of understanding what FNAF 4 is telling us is first understanding what came before it, that being FNAF 1, 2, and most importantly, 3. And while I won't cover every little detail of each game, I will cover what I think is important for this theory video. So starting with FNAF 1, the story we had at the time was very simple compared to now. In the game, we're playing as Mike Schmidt, better known now as Michael Afton. And in the game, we can discover through newspaper clippings that 5 kids were lured by a man into a back room in a mascot costume. 5 missing kids were 5 animatronics: Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, and Golden Freddy. It's also implied in the game through the same newspaper clippings that the killer hid their bodies in the suits, and that's why they kill you the exact same way. Golden Freddy in this game too was also a secret, spawning in your office through a rare chance poster. They can also produce a childlike giggle, but if you stare at them too long in your office, you'll be met with a static jump scare and dying in the process. Golden Freddy also seems to be the source of the various It's Me hallucinations that flash into the screen during the game. They also appear to be directed specifically at Mike Schmidt, as if Golden Freddy knew who Mike was already. With FNAF 2 though, the lore was expanded, with Scott building upon the universe with the introduction of the toy animatronics, the DCI, Fredbear's Diner, and so on. This is also the game where we're introduced to the puppet, who is separate from the others with the music box mechanic. She also seems to have the ability to induce hallucinations and even teleport, as we see her do when she escapes the music box. These abilities are actually quite similar to Golden Freddy's. Regarding the minigames though, the ones important to this theory are Take Cake and Give Life. Starting with Take Cake to the children, this shows us what appears to be an older location with a constantly crying child outside, with Freddy giving cake to the children. William then drives up in his purple car, kills the child before leaving, with the puppet in vain saying, "Save him." This showed us the original depiction of the puppet's origin before Pizzeriasimulator. This also paints the puppet as unique and separate by the nature of her death. In the next minigame, Give Life, we see how the children possess the animatronics. It represents this by symbolically showing the puppet giving gifts and then giving them an animatronic head for the animatronic they possess, assigning them their roles, or in other words, guiding souls into vessels. And while there are alternative views out there, such as the one posted by Ritos is an excellent video on the subject, which you should check out if you haven't already, using the story alone together, he theorized that she may be showing the kids their dead bodies, making them aware of their deaths, which then allows them to possess the animatronics. Either way, she has to be the cause of their possession, given the whole nature and context of Give Life, meaning give the gift of life as animatronics. And there is another thing to know about this minigame, is that the fifth child is not present until the last frame with the jump scare, but isn't given any gift or mask. This should be noted, as this child spawns in the same position the puppet does at the start of the minigame, and it begins the puppet's defined personality and characteristics to ignore or skip a kid, especially when Emily later refers to the MCI kids as carried in her arms in FNAF 6. You'll see why soon, this has to be true. That's FNAF 2 though, but what about FNAF 3? Well, the most important part of FNAF 3 relates to the Happiest Day minigames. However, it is worth mentioning that Ralph, through the taste of here throughout the game, reveals to us the existence of the spring-locked suits, but more importantly, spring body, and that was used in the MCI. More on that later though. However, in regards to the Happiest Day minigames, these are arguably the most important and most crucial story element in FNAF 3, or the whole original trilogy might argue. These are still discussed to this day, and their full meaning is unknown, but this is where the puppet and Golden Freddy's roles are the largest. Almost all of the build-up minigames too are cryptic, and Kurt does a theory video dedicated to them alone. And while some will be relevant in FNAF 4, we're going to be going over only Happiest Day for now. All these minigames are about fulfilling another minigame, that being Happiest Day. And at any point in the game, you can enter this Happiest Day minigame by clicking a picture on the wall, where you play as the puppet going down a birthday party with an unmasked child on the other side of a table. By giving a cake to each kid, it one by one adds them to this minigame, which you can check your progress on any night. And after gathering all the children, you can then give the fifth child a cake, which then causes them to put their mask on, revealing themselves to be the Golden Freddy child. Their bodies will now disappear as their masks fall, indicating they are now at rest. One important thing to keep in mind in this minigame too is that the puppet is always there. Unlike the other kids, she doesn't need to be gathered or given a cake. She's there by default. The minigame also frames it as if she's behind it, freeing the child who's shown to be Golden Freddy. Considering this and how she's always there, it establishes a strong connection between Golden Freddy and the puppet. This is solidified when we see that Happiest Day actually parallels Give Life. And yes, I know, parallels have become a buzzword in the community these days, thanks to the books. But this shows us the kids how in their respective masks with the puppet being there. Except now on Happiest Day, the fifth kid finally gains his mask and is able to rest. These minigames directly reflect one another. It connects the puppet and Golden Freddy together in a deeper way. Marking the fifth kid here is somehow special, but not forgotten by the puppet, because the puppet did Happiest Day for this child. This generally wraps up the short pre-FNAF 4 analysis. These are the main things to keep in mind as we enter FNAF 4. As Scott has said in the past, he looks to clarify the mysteries or confusions of the previous game in the next game. So coming up from FNAF 3, the general questions in the community did revolve around Happiest Day and what made Golden Freddy so special, and how the puppet is connected to all that. This mindset, in my opinion, should be held when we enter FNAF 4, since Scott would have had these central mysteries in mind when making the game. However, with that in mind, let's move on to the next part. Now, finally entering FNAF 4, we can start getting into this game's story. And while there are many aspects of FNAF 4 that could be gotten into, including but not limited to, is the gameplay real or are they dreams? Who do the sisters room belong to? What does Toy Chica missing her beak mean? Or what was in that damn box? These are all questions that could deserve videos dedicated to them. However, we'll be focusing on the crying child for this theory. Who is he? Who does the crying child become? How is this child tied to the previous game's story? How does it answer any of it? Well, I think the key to solving these questions comes down to 3 more. Who is the plush bear? What did the crying child see? And who is the crying child himself? Let's address these one by one, starting with answering who our psychic little friend is. Plush Bear, commonly known in the community as Psychic Friend Fredbear, is a mainstay character in FNAF 4's story, being the first character we actually see and hear from. We actively see him near the crying child when he's at his house or outside, always watching over him. Even when he's not nearby, he's able to speak to the crying child almost telepathically. He also appears in the crying child's mind as he's dying, promising to put him back together. Who then is this character? Why are they protecting the crying child? And why did they care so much about him to the point that they comfort him as he dies? Well, I think we know the answer to each of these questions. To start off, we need to first establish that the plush bear is in fact possessed. This has mostly been forgotten by the community at large, but very much was and still is the case. Plush Bear is able to teleport around the area, being only visible to the crying child. He's also able to talk to us when he's not nearby or in our direct possession, such as when the plush of kid says we don't have one with us. Plush Bear also has one of the hallmarks of possession, pinprick eyes, eyes that match what we've seen from possessed characters before in the series. These eyes are often an indicator of possession, and with Plush Bear is an example of a marker possession, as it fundamentally changes the plushie's appearance, like how Charlie's possession affected the puppet's appearance. Outside the game though, Sky's even consistently approved merch with the name Possessed Fredbear Plush, in contrast to removed things such as the Cassidy Kazoo. Even the new version of the plushie with the walkie-talkie even has the same name. And we know Scott does care about merch names and descriptions based on previous statements. To finalize this point, consider that FNAF 1-3 was very much a paranormal story, and this includes FNAF 4, which serves as a finale to those games. So when we talk about the plush bear's supernatural attributes, remember the theme at the time were spirits possessing animatronics and objects. So if the plush acts possessed, it is probably possessed. So we've established that the plush bear is possessed, but the question becomes, by who? Well, I think the answer is actually pretty clear. We can start by looking at the final scene of the game, where Plush Bear promises to put the crying child back together. Remember again, this is a paranormal story, one where dead kids become animatronics. The same applies to the crying child, and while this is something we'll explore more later, the important thing here to realize is that these dead kids become robots through the puppet. So, it makes sense that if Plush Bear's line is indicating that he turns the crying child into an animatronic, that means that the plush bear is the puppet. But is there any direct or subtle proof in the game itself that points us to the puppet? Well, yes actually. Remember how we can explore the house in the minigames? Well, take note of the deliberate detail of plush bear being placed on top of a grandfather's clock. If you don't know why I point this out, the puppet's theme is actually my grandfather's clock. And this isn't some random reference either. The grandfather's clock is prominent in FNAF 4, as you can hear its chime in the trailer and commonly in the gameplay. The dialogue in the trailer even turns yellow like Plush Bear's text color as the grandfather's clock chimes. So Scott did have a specific intention when utilizing the grandfather's clock in the game. Plush Bear's eyes even follow you around like the puppet's eyes do in the previous games. Ralph even mentions in FNAF 2 that the puppet is always thinking, and it can go anywhere. This subtly told us that since FNAF 2, the puppet was always more aware, able to go and do as it pleases. But what seals the deal is, as mentioned before, Plush Bear has a mark of possession, a change in its appearance due to possession. And there's one character in the series we've seen this most blatantly with before, that being the puppet. This was even confirmed in FNAF 6, when it shows that the puppet did not originally have tear tracks but only gained them through Charlie's possession of the puppet. The crying child actively reflects the puppet, not only paralleling his design, but also being the only other living child to be constantly crying. But more tellingly, in a 96 minigame, we receive a direct callback to the crying puppet from FNAF 3's Mango's Quest minigame, with the crying child recreating it perfectly. This used to be a major piece of evidence that the crying child was the puppet before FNAF 6, but we know now that he can't be the puppet. However, if he's not the puppet, but is being represented as the puppet, as if he is the puppet, but literally isn't, that makes the crying child the puppet's reflection, tying the two characters together without them literally being the same person. And if the crying child reflects the puppet in the same minigame where a character implied to be the puppet promises to put them back together, it also connects the puppet to that scene, making him the plush bear. As a more minor but additional note here as well, if you combine the plush bear's yellow with the puppet's white from FNAF 2, you get the near identical pale yellow color and code to the final speaker's pale yellow. This tells us it's the same character throughout all the nights. The reason then is different on night 6 is that the puppet as plush bear and the puppet as the puppet should be seen as two separate roles. Everything before the last cutscene is the puppet being plush bear in that role. In the final cutscene, however, it's the puppet speaking as himself, with the plush bear in the scene representing him. So, it's a different color, representing the puppet as himself. So we've shown here that the puppet is plush bear and is trying to protect the crying child and help him escape and stand up to his brother. But after he gets bitten, he promises to put the crying child back together. However, this does leave us with two more questions. Who the crying child even is, and what did the crying child see that has him crying oceans underneath tables? And what about it makes plush bear so concerned for the crying child? Well, the answer to those two questions are coming up next. The question of what the crying child saw is one, like many others in this franchise, still very debated to this day. It's commonly believed in the year of our Lord 2024 that the crying child either saw a spring lock failure or just mistook William placing a suit on someone as being eaten by an animatronic. However, today, we are going to be casting those aside and showing you what he really saw, the missing children's incident. Now, seeing the MCI is not a new concept or theory at all. It's actually one of the original theories about FNAF 4. The theory though has fallen out of popularity due to the rise of MCI 85, but I would argue that's the only logical answer to what directly is presented in the game. For a basic rundown of the theory, it follows the idea of MCI 83, the notion that the MCI took place on June 26, 1983, and that before the events of FNAF 4, the crying child witnessed the event himself, seeing William in a spring-locked suit lure children into the back room and stuff them into the suits. Now, you may be asking, what's the evidence for this theory? Well, let's start. FNAF 4 presents a consistent narrative point of the crying child seeing something he misunderstood. This was even furthered through teasers on the FNAF World website with an image saying, "What's seen in the shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child." But what in the game gleams light on what the crying child saw? Well, let's first go to the Night 2 minigame, where the bite victim is crying under a table. Plushbear tells him that our older brother has left us at the location and that we hate it here. The Plushbear then encourages the bite victim to get up and escape, and he does get up, but if he attempts to go to the left hallway, Plushbear warns him, exclaiming, "No, don't you remember what you saw? The exit is the other way. Hurry and leave." But when he attempts to go right, a man in a Fredbear suit appears, and Plushbear once more exclaims, "It's too late. Hurry the other way and find someone who will help. You know what will happen if he catches you." Notice to whom this line is in reference, the he here being Fredbear. Focus on the wording of the statement as well. This straightaway connects whatever crying child saw to people in yellow suits catching children. And if you remember, what happens when a man in a yellow suit catches a child? Oh yeah, he kills them. This also suggests that the crying child was involved in some way, especially due to the wording of "you know," telling us the player directly knows what happens, being killed. This also means the Plushbear knows as well, meaning they were a victim of William too, which makes sense if it's the puppet. Now, somebody may be saying, "Wait, that can mean several things. What makes you so sure it's in reference to the MCI?" Well, my dear viewer, here's your answer. When you go left into the next hallway, we see the shadows of Spring Bonnie and Fredbear, and Plushbear encourages the crying child to get past them. "You can find help if you can get past them. You have to be strong." The shadows are also purple, connecting them to William using the spring suits in the MCI. This connection becomes even more clear when we see William putting a suit onto an employee in the same minigame, conveying that whatever Cryingchild saw ties to Afton putting suits onto people after catching them in a yellow suit. This would also explain the symbolism of Cryingchild being afraid of the purple shadows of Fredbear and Swing Bonnie due to William using these suits, which can only be the MCI. Now, you may be stopping me again, frantically typing at your keyboards declaring, "William used Swing Bonnie's suit for the MCI, not Fredbear." And well, that's where you're wrong. As I may have briefly conveyed earlier, it's very likely William used both suits in the MCI. Golden Freddy was certainly the original intention in FNAF 1 and 2. In FNAF 1, for example, it was implied through Golden Freddy's empty suit-like design and just process of elimination. But in FNAF 2, it was more explicit, as during the Night 6 phone call, Ralph mentioned someone used a yellow suit in the back room in reference to the recent murders.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it.
Night 6 is also the same night Golden Freddy starts to appear in FNAF 2, conveying that he was the suit used here. Considering Swing Bonnie also didn't exist properly at the time, it was clearly Golden Freddy. Now, one could argue that Scott recontextualized it to be where Swing Bonnie was using the first MCI, but Fredbear was using the DCI, but I doubt that's the case. As Scott has shown, there's no need to do so. In the Silvereyes, William actually used both suits, Fredbear for Brooks, the Golden Freddy child of the trilogy, and Swing Bonnie for the 4 other children. And considering the time frame the Silvereyes was written, this element is likely in the games and reflected in FNAF 4, with the Cryingchild being afraid of both spring suit characters. This point is further proven when we take into account what Shadow Freddy represented in the previous games. In FNAF 2, Shadow Freddy spawns in the same backrooms where the Golden Freddy suit was, slouched in the same suit position, and is purple, the inverse to Golden Freddy's yellow. And not only that, but in Follow Me, it's Shadow Freddy that's luring the children, recreating what William did in the MCI. If William had just purely used Swing Bonnie for the MCI, why would Shadow Freddy be the character luring the children? It would be unfamiliar to them. But if Golden Freddy was used for at least just one child, then it would be familiar. So yes, it's very possible, if not very likely, William had used both suits in the game's timeline, maybe the same way, using the Golden Freddy suit for the Golden Freddy child? Moving on past Night 2 though, we can address the expected elephant in the room, the pigtail girl. A girl who commands legions of demons, a girl who strikes fear into Satan himself, a girl that's a subject to debate to this day. We meet this girl in the Night 3 minigame after escaping her location, giving us her infamous line, "Be careful, I hear they're coming to life at night, and if you die, they hide your body and never tell anyone." This is an undeniable callback to the MCI, and a reference to the fact that the animatronics come to life at night, and then guards go missing, which, you know, would cause a lot of rumors. This tells us the MCI has already occurred, which makes sense, given Night 2 gave us a proper introduction to the Cryingchild's fear plotline, and it established that it's related to the yellow suits and something that happens when they catch you. And at the same time, in the same minigame, you're able to see a scene of Purple Guy putting a suit onto someone, as it was tying the two together. And then, conveniently, in the next minigame, you have a kid speaking of rumors that match the MCI 1-to-1, which seem to specifically scare the crying child, as if Scott was trying to clue us in even further. Scott even said there are no random Easter eggs in FNAF 4, which means the line can't just be a nothing burger, nor can it refer to other incidents such as the Springlock failures. Seeing someone put on a Springlock suit wouldn't translate to animatronics coming to life at night and doing what the phone guy says they do, because of the MCI. So in reality, I could argue with this single piece of evidence that the MCI has already occurred, but in conjunction with Night 2, it becomes even stronger. But there is something else that adds to this, something most people don't realize, and that's the Night 4 minigame. On Night 4, the crying child is stuck in a backroom and crying for help, and it's odd to dedicate an entire minigame to just being stuck in a backroom. So what's the story purpose for this? Well, first look at the environment. The Fredbear suit is missing its head, and it's framed to look like a child got stuffed inside of him. This framing is likely intentional, given FNAF 4 has a consistent theme of "from the eyes of a child." Imagine if you locked a little kid stuck in a dark backroom with the suit of a character he's terrified of being hurt by, with him seeing what looks like little strings of something coming from within it. he would likely think it's a person, even if it was just wires. This makes even more sense if the crying child saw the MCI, because the memory of that event would resurface in this room. Also, the lack of tomorrow is another day is significant in this instance too, as we've gotten this line in every previous minigame. But this time, when stuck in a backroom in an empty Golden Freddy suit, Plushbear is silent. This is a vague implication in my opinion, that being stuck in a backroom means you don't have another day. These minigames have to be trying to convey something, and this uses environmental details to paint a picture to the ongoing theme of what the crying child saw. And considering before, with night 2 and 3 giving us clues on what the crying child did see, this night should be no different. It's just subtle storytelling, informing us that the crying child saw the MCI. Now, it is all fine and dandy, and it does get the point across, but there's one thing, one smoking gun, I believe still stands strong to this day. These are my friends. This line, like others, is often forgotten or interpreted in complex ways, but I believe it just means what we all thought it meant all those years ago. Those are the crying child's friends, in reference to the plushies that represent the classic animatronics that got possessed in the MCI. Remember how the puppet, whom we showed earlier to be the plush bear, appears next to the crying child with the 4 classic plushies behind her? Notice the way she talks, starting with "you're broken" and then saying "we are still your friend." We. She uses "we." If this is Charlie, then her speaking as herself rather than Plushbear implies that there are multiple spirits here as the crying child dies. We know this to be the case too because when the last of the 4 plushies, Freddy, is fading away, she changes from the plural to singular pronoun, saying "I'm still here." This clearly conveys to us that multiple spirits were present, slowly fading away until it's just the crying child and Charlie. Taking all this too, given everything we talked about before, with the crying child being afraid of being caught by Fredbear, shadows represented as purple, rumors that match the MCI, the whole backroom minigame, it all adds up if the MCI has happened, and these represent the souls of crying child's friends murdered in the MCI. Now, you may have one last question. If he saw the MCI, then what does Scott mean by saying the bite victim misunderstood what he saw? And well, that is a good question, but the answer is also pretty simple. During the MCI, the crying child thought William, in the suit, was the actual character of Fredbear. And that's why he thought Fredbear, the character, was after him in the minigames, even if it was just an employee, not telling the difference between the man in the suit and the character itself. So, we've proven here that the crying child saw the MCI and was friends with the MCI kids and the puppet. The puppet attempts to protect the crying child, and after the bite, she and the other souls comfort him in his final moments, before Charlie promises to put the crying child back together. This answers 2 major questions, the plushbear's identity and what the crying child saw. Though one last major question remains. If the plushbear is the puppet and the crying child witnessed the MCI, then who does the crying child become? What is his fate after the final minigame? And how does it impact the story? Well, let's get right into it, shall we, in the next part. We can now address what's arguably the most important question in fnaflore itself, that being, who does the crying child become? And as you can probably tell, the answer is going to be Golden Freddy, but luckily for me, this actually is one of the easiest to prove, as the common consensus today, the crying child is Golden Freddy alongside Cassidy. And while I will contest this claim later, we are fundamentally on the same page. So what evidence in the game do we use to come to this conclusion? Well, let's start how the crying child is constantly tied to Fredbear throughout the whole game. His friend is a Fredbear plush, and while he has a fear of both spring suit characters, he has a particular fear and emphasized fear of Fredbear. He's even left in the backroom with an empty Fredbear suit in Night 4, and most of all, he's bitten by Fredbear in the bite of 83. This kid is constantly tied to Fredbear in every instance. But there's one thing the Fierce community has known for 9 years, that being the Happiest Day minigame parallels the bite of 83 perfectly. This one parallel alone has sustained the Golden Victim Fury for 9 years, as this directly places the crying child as Golden Freddy. And we know it's not an accident either, as each minigame gives us a black screen with a countdown to a party. So we know this parallel does relate to this. And one easy way to prove that this parallel is intentional is that FNAF 4 was meant to clarify upon the mysteries of the previous game, that being Golden Freddy, the puppet, and most of all, Happiest Day. And FNAF 3's good ending is all about building up to his Happiest Day birthday party, and FNAF 4, a prequel to that game, meant to clarify that game, has a massive build-up to a birthday party that goes wrong and the child dies. A child with connections to the puppet, but also Fredbear. A party that is directly the reversal of Happiest Day. And when you consider that every other Happiest Day minigame can tie back to FNAF 4, such as Mango's Quest, BB's Air Adventure, the Glitch minigame, and so on, that logic alone should display the intentionality of this parallel. However, there are other things here that people don't consider that make this point even stronger, that being the various other parallels in the game itself. We turn to the Night 3 minigame for a moment, where we can discover the Fredbear and Friends cartoon show. Notice how it directly parallels the Vibe 83, with the Crying Child as Fredbear and the Full Bullies as the classic character. This once more places the Crying Child as Fredbear. But that's not all. Look at the show again. The characters chosen are odd. It's Fredbear and Friends, so you would expect Spring Bonnie, the co-star, to be there. However, it only displays Fredbear and the 4 classics without Spring Bonnie. But why do this? Well, let's take a look back at the These Are My Friends line. Sound familiar? If you say yes, that's because it does. It connects to Fredbear and Friends. We can prove this connection too by considering a few simple details. If we already accept that the Crying Child represents Fredbear in Happiest Day, and the Fredbear and Friends parallel, then that directly connects Crying Child to being Fredbear in the show as well. In other words, the show can also say Crying Child and Friends. To wrap a little bow on that point, the idea of the Crying Child having friends is consistent in the game. It's one of the first dialogues we can hear from the Crying Child, and one of the final lines before his death is a direct callback to said line, declaring that they are still his friends. So when several connections directly place the Crying Child as Fredbear and the others as his friends, it means simply what it means. He is Fredbear. He is Golden Freddy. As a bonus, the Night 6 cutscene may also parallel Happiest Day, with the puppet as Plush Bear and the 4 classics behind her, with Crying Child in Golden Freddy's position once more. But that one may be a little more debatable. Either way, the fact that the Crying Child is constantly tied to Fredbear and represented as Fredbear is very telling. Not to exclude the Crying Child being Golden Freddy, it's almost confirmed due to the recent release the week before book, where Ralph inputs a 1983 code that can hear a recording of the Vibe 83, hearing the Crying Child crying, and even hearing it after he hangs up for being bitten by what's presumed to be Golden Freddy. The Crying Child being Golden Freddy too explains a lot about the previous games, such as the It's Me's being a line associated with Golden Freddy and directed at Mike in FNAF 1, It's Me in this case being Golden Freddy reaching out to his brother. This also explains the Happiest Day minigame. It's the recreation of the Crying Child's failed party. The puppet who is Plush Bear is turning his worst day into his happiest day, gathering all his friends together once more for one last party. But this does create a problem, that being the 5th child. If the Crying Child is Golden Freddy, it seems to conflict what was clearly established in FNAF 1 to 3, where the 5th child is clearly Golden Freddy and the receiver of Happiest Day, 5 missing kids for 5 animatronics, meaning the only way for the Crying Child to be Golden Freddy is to be the 5th child? You may now be slamming your fist down the table, typing once more, how can the Crying Child be the 5th child if he died in the MCI? Well, there is an answer to this dilemma, but many of you will not like it, but we got this far, so let's keep going. The only way for the Crying Child to be the Golden Freddy we've known for the past 3 games is that he has to be the 5th child, but how can he be alive during FNAF 4 if he died months prior in the MCI? Well, we have an answer with our favorite life-given marionette. If you can't see where I'm going to go with this, I'm going to be saying he got revived by the puppet. But don't click off the video yet, this actually isn't a stretch at all. Let's first go back to how the puppet worked in FNAF 2 in Give Gives Give Life. As spoke of earlier, the puppet is guiding souls in the vessels, and it represents this from the symbology of the mask. But the 5th child never got his mask. Why? Well, we showed her being entirely out of character for the puppet to ignore the child, so if he didn't ignore him, what did she do? Well, she did give him life, just not as an animatronic. She revived him as he was. And this isn't out of the puppet's ability either. If she's just guiding souls into vessels, human bodies are vessels too, making it very viable. And even if you disagree with the symbology of Give Gives Give Life, revival and healing is a confirmed concept in this series, such as when Michael Brooks healed Clayton of a mortal wound in the 4th closet, or Revenant keeping Michael alive in Sister Location, or when Jessica in Frailty, through Revenant, healed and revived dead people. The concept of spirits or spiritual things like Revenant having the ability to revive has been in the series for years at this point, so it's very probable that the concept was considered in the original games. So it's pretty clear that FNaF has shown that it's feasible for a spirit to heal, revive, or keep someone alive through their own will. So, if she didn't guide his soul back into his body, she simply did one of the established means of healing and reviving that there is in the series. So, with these facts in mind, and with the knowledge that it would be out of character for the puppet to ignore this child, I can make the theory that give life was a foreshadowing of the 5th kid's revival. She did give life to the 5th child, just not as an animatronic at that moment. Staying on the topic of give life, we point out earlier that it parallels Happiest Day, with the 4 masked kids and the puppet, with the 5th kid unmasked, except on Happiest Day, he gains his mask. This parallel directly connects the two minigames, but when you remember that Happiest Day parallels the Bite 83, this leaves you with a major revelation. If give life parallels Happiest Day, with the 5th kid being the Happiest Day child, and the Bite 83 parallels Happiest Day, with the crying child being the Happiest Day child, it means the crying child is that 5th child. Even the pre-Happiest Day minigames support that the 5th child and the crying child are the same. Each Happiest Day minigame can connect to a FNaF 4 one. Some examples being BB's Air Adventure tied to the Balloon Key on Night 3, the Glitch minigame connected to the Shadows of Spring Bonnie, the Windows in Mangle's Quest tying to Plush Shop Hallway, and there being a broken Mangle in the sister's room, not to exclude the crying puppet that's recreated on Night 6 perfectly. These minigames all connect to the crying child, as if these are all representative of his memory, which then further shows he and the 5th child are the same. However, there's one FNaF 3 minigame I want to call attention to. One I think shows us the memory of the crying child's murder. That minigame being Stage 01. When you enter the Stage 01 minigame, it seems quite basic, but we can clearly tell there's more going on here when you look at all the rooms of the minigame. In most of these rooms, we have 3 happy children besides Spring Bonnie and Fredbear, but in one, a child goes missing. The question then becomes who and why? Well, consider first that we play as Fredbear, moving up stage and then glitching out of the minigame, with a child who then disappears, conveying that this child was killed or taken maybe by Fredbear. This could mean that if I'm correct, and Golden Freddy was a suit used in the MCI, and that was used for the Golden Freddy child like the novels, that would mean William used it to lure the crying child, which is then represented in this minigame. If true, this means Stage 01, while on a surface level, this refers to Stage 01 of Freddy's, could also symbolize Stage 1 of the MCI, or the first child taken in the MCI. Now, you may be saying, these are all valid points, Jazz, but isn't the crying child William's son? Why would he kill him? This is a good question, and I do have a more nuanced answer, but that deserves its own theory video. However, we can boil it down to hatred, as William clearly has no care for his children and is willing to kill them if they become a problem. We see this in the game as where he tries to kill Michael in FNaF 6, and when he tries to kill Vanessa in the movie. He's even abusive to Elizabeth in the novel trilogy. William in general has little to no regard for his children in every timeline, so even without the full answer, we do have a basis for William doing this, and as an added bonus, it would make him look innocent in the MCI, especially if the crying child was led by Fredbear, Henry's suit, making Henry a prime suspect. That may answer that question, but I'm sure you're also asking, if the crying child is the 5th child, then how is he missing according to the newspapers? He clearly is around in FNaF 4. This question is actually also pretty simple to answer. The newspapers were simply written before he was revived and found. The 2 newspapers we saw were written when all the children were dead. There's not much directly pointing to this per se, but based on sheer logic, it does make sense, but I may produce a more nuanced answer in the future. There's one last, but very important argument to make here, and it's that FNaF 1, 2, and 3 were centered around the MCI, and that was the center point of their story, what it was all about, and if not directly, it was adjacent. So when we go into FNaF 4, a game titled The Final Chapter, with a description saying it's the final chapter to the original FNaF story, that tells us this game is about the MCI. It's the final chapter to the MCI story, the story of 1 to 3, which was about the MCI kids, the puppet, and their killer. So logically, FNaF 4 is going to be a story about the MCI, finishing off. It's 4 games, 1 story, you may say. If the crying child is the 5th child, it explains why Golden Freddy is so special. He was not only murdered by his own father, but revived before dying again by Fredbear on his own birthday, the same character William used to kill him in the MCI. It explains the connections to the puppet and why they're so interlinked and close. The puppet has a close relationship with the crying child, seeking to protect him above all else, doing Happiest Day just to free him. He even explains Nightmare being Shadow Freddy. Nightmare is Crying Child's true fear of Fredbear, William in Yellow Bear, or as we know, Shadow Freddy. In simple words, FNAF 4 ends the original story of the MCI by showing the origins of Golden Freddy, why he's so special, and how he's connected to the puppet, Mike, and others. This theory also explains things in later games as well, such as why William spies on the crying child in Sister Location, and why Golden Freddy tortures William in Ultimate Custom Night. But that's another theory for another time. With that said, that's the theory. I believe the crying child is the 5th child and the one and only Golden Freddy. I hope to maybe expand on this theory in the future, as I have more ideas on the crying child's identity and his name in particular, but I hope this interested you enough and got you to think. However, there is one last thing, a specific theory many will counter this with, one I want to address before we end the video, so let's get right into it. Some may ask, however, why theorize this? Why not separate the crying child and this 5th child and have them both be Golden Freddy, or in theory terms, Goldenduo, seemingly resolving the many conflicts? Well, that's because in my eyes, that would be a retcon. It's not to say there's no evidence for Goldenduo. There is, but think of it this way. In FNAF 1 and 2, it was hammered home that the 5th child is Golden Freddy and is the one who's unique and special. There is only ever an implication of there being one Golden Freddy in these games. The same goes for FNAF 3. After the core 4 animatronics are dismantled, the 5th child, representing the ghostly Golden Freddy, appears to chase William. Even all of Happiest Day is about freeing this single Golden Freddy child, which at that point was almost definitely the 5th child. Considering too they all pair with the 4 MCI kids and the puppet, which parallels give life, there's no reason for it to be anyone else, or does the game ever imply otherwise? But in FNAF 4, the crying child is constantly tied to Fredbear. He's constantly tied to the MCI and the puppet as well. Every parallel in FNAF 4 places the crying child as Golden Freddy among the missing kids, connecting the crying child to Happiest Day in every facet, and thus to Golden Freddy. Given our argument regarding context too, and the game clearly trying to answer questions about Golden Freddy and Happiest Day, it's truly suggesting the crying child is the same Golden Freddy from FNAF 1, 2, and 3. The game never implies or sets up the concept of 2 Golden Freddys. And considering since FNAF 4 is meant to be the last game, it makes no sense for Scott to retcon the FNAF 3 Golden Freddy child to be the crying child and have there be 2 Golden Freddys without hinting at or elaborating on it at all until like fazbearfrights or the logbook comes out. That would also leave the 5th child's story completely unresolved. If you maintain that the 5th child is the Happiest Day kid though, then the crying child's story is left without resolution, and there's no strong answer to its parallels to Happiest Day. So to me, it's more logically consistent that if FNAF 4 is saying that the crying child is Golden Freddy kid of FNAF 3, then that means he's the Golden Freddy kid of all 4 games, which makes him the 5th child. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is my first ever video project and recording. I hope the editing and audio was alright for a first timer. It took a lot of work to make this. Maybe I'll make more videos in the near future. I do have some ideas involving the crying child's name, the logbook, and FNAF 4's gameplay, so who knows? Though I want to also give special thanks to my friend Tutlesss who made the artwork for this video. Check his tour out in the description. Also, I want to give special thanks to the creators, ID's Fantasy, Ritos, Game Theory, and The Underwood of Truth for being my inspirations for making this video. You are all fantastic creators that I really respect. Thank you for making content and making fantastic theories. With all that said though, I hope you all enjoyed the video.